Describing human consciousness needs to be done if we are to attain to a higher understanding of who we are collectively. Charts, images, diagrams, and explanations have been put forth by humans across the eons, all attempting to visualize and depict what it is they were seeing when it comes to the human anatomy in this dimension and beyond. While the current scientific explanation works with the material human form, a wonder to behold in its own right, a great many scientists and mystics alike have also determined to describe what exists beyond the physical. You're probably familiar with some of the basics here. If we were to attempt to map out the complete human energy field, you'd see chakras running up the spinal column with many meridians and lesser chakras across the body too. Emanating out from the body would be a large toroidal field connected with the heart, which would encompass the layers of the aura, which includes the mental body, the emotional body, astral body, and causal body, among a few others. Primarily here we are concerned with the physical, astral, and causal bodies, which make up our soulful existence across the three great planes of our multidimensional reality, which we can term as the material universe, the astral universe, and the causal universe. Beyond the material, the energetic nature of the astral and causal realities are significantly more subtle than anything we can easily perceive today. We must consider them even finer and more subtle than any atomic frequency, which is why we cannot find these realms with modern instruments. However, our bodies are designed to access these places, but which only comes through personal mastery of our body of consciousness. Today, many people have documented their journeys within the astral through the art of astral projection, or have experienced them in other ways, such as through near-death experiences or potent psychedelic journeys. The human body is said to be composed of 35 divinely orchestrated thoughts, 19 of which form the astral body, and 16 elements of which are then materialized as a result, making up the physical form. The 19 astral idea elements are intelligence, ego, feeling, mind, the 5 instruments of knowledge, which are the subtle powers behind the physical sense organs of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, as well as the 5 instruments of action, the powers for the abilities to procreate, excrete, talk, walk, and exercise manual skill, and 5 instruments of life force, those empowered to perform crystallizing, assimilating, eliminating, metabolizing, and circulatory functions in the body. The last 5 mentioned are the very same as the 5 types of prana we discuss in the spirit science episode called Types of Energy. Together, these 35 ideas are all created initially in thought through divine intelligence at the level of the causal body, which is the first body that houses the soul as it comes into existence from the indivisible spirit. This wisdom was passed on and given to mankind by Mahavatar Babaji and his students, and we express gratitude to the Self-Realization Fellowship for helping to publish the material in so many ways. The human body's energetic structure can also be mapped in other ways, such as through astrology or human design. But for now, let us take this conversation to another level. Just perceiving this map does not do as much for us as we might think. We need a usable pathway to ascend through our present understanding and into enlightenment, and that is where the work of Dr. David Hawkins comes in. He is a legendary psychiatrist, physician, researcher, spiritual teacher, and lecturer. He is an MD and a PhD, and for his work on the map of consciousness, received a royal knighting by the Danish crown. This map he is so well known and respected for demonstrates the scales of various levels of consciousness from the absolute lowest places where one can exist, shame and despair, all the way to full enlightenment. This is a very powerful chart and pathway diagram based on a numerical scale between 20 and 1,000, which calibrate to the different levels of consciousness. He explains that the critical response point in the scale of consciousness calibrates at the level 200, which is the level associated with integrity and courage. All attitudes, thoughts, feelings, associations, entities, or historical figures below that level of calibration make a person go weak. Those that calibrate higher make subjects go strong, meaning that through muscle testing and other testing methods, one can actually identify their body, their muscles, and their minds becoming weaker or stronger. This is the balance point between weak and strong attractors, between negative and positive influence. He therein dubs the difference between strong and weak attractor fields as power and force. Power is the alignment of our thoughts and actions with our highest values and principles, and it is characterized by feelings of love, joy, and peace. Force, on the other hand, is the use of manipulation or coercion to get what we want, and it is associated with negative emotions such as fear, anger, and aggression. Power is the more effective and positive approach to achieving our goals, and it can lead to greater fulfillment and well-being. But today, many of us have been conditioned to think that force, controlling others, is power. But force is a false material level that always has to be backed up by a reason. True power comes from the spirit and is attained through personal development and spiritual practices. At the levels below 200, the primary impetus is personal survival, although at the very bottom of the scale, the zone of hopelessness and depression, even this motive is lacking. All levels below 200 are destructive of life in both the individual and society level at large. All levels above 200 are constructive expressions of power. The decisive level of 200 is the fulcrum that divides the general areas of force and power. And as one crosses the boundary between negative and positive influence into courage, the well-being of others becomes increasingly important. By the 500 level, the happiness of others emerges as the essential motivating force. The high 500s are characterized by interest in spiritual awareness for both oneself and others, and by the 600s, the good of mankind and the search for enlightenment are the primary goals. From 700 to 1000, life is dedicated to the salvation of all of humanity. Dr. Hawkins also describes that for many people, they will spend an entire lifetime and barely move 1 point up the chart. Others may do much better, rising very quickly towards a more enlightened consciousness, especially if they are focused and committed to their spiritual development. But such miracles are far more rare in the world. But maybe times are changing though, and humanity is going through an evolutionary leap. Ultimately, that will depend on all of us. Reflection on this map can bring about a profound expansion of one's empathy for life in its variety of expressions. Throughout history, all of the world's greatest spiritual disciplines have been concerned with techniques to ascend through these levels. Most have also implied, or even specifically stated, that to move up this ladder is an arduous task. Success depends on having a teacher, or at least teachings, to give specific instruction and inspiration to the aspirant, who might otherwise despair over his inability to achieve the goal unaided. It's very important to know also that the calibration figures do not represent an arithmetic, but a logarithmic progression. Thus, the level 300 is not twice the amplitude of 150, it is 10 to the 300th power. An increase of even a few points represents a major advance in inner power, and so the rate of increase in power as we move up the scale is enormous. Further, keep in mind that for almost everyone, personal levels of consciousness are always mixed. A person may operate on one level in a given area of life, and on quite another level in another area. For example, maybe in relationships, a person is living with lots of fear, but they are very courageous in business endeavors. An individual's overall level of consciousness is the sum total effect of these various levels. Here is a simple breakdown of each level in the path to enlightenment. Energy level 20, shame. The level of shame is perilously proximate to death, which may be chosen out of shame as conscious suicide, or more subtly elected, by failure to take steps to prolong life. Death by avoidable accident is common here. We all have some awareness of the pain of losing faith, becoming discredited, or feeling like a non-person. Early life experiences that lead to shame, such as sexual abuse, warp the personality for a lifetime unless these issues are resolved by therapy. Some shame-based individuals compensate with perfectionism and rigidity, becoming driven and intolerant. Since it pulls down the whole level of personality, shame results in a vulnerability to the other negative emotions, and therefore often produces false pride, anger, and guilt. Energy level 30, guilt. Guilt, so commonly used in our society to manipulate and punish, manifests itself in a variety of expressions, such as remorse, self-recrimination, masochism, and the whole gamut of symptoms of victimhood. Unconscious guilt results in psychosomatic disease, accident proneness, and suicidal behaviors. Many people struggle with guilt their entire lives, while others desperately attempt to escape it by denying it altogether. Guilt domination results in a preoccupation with sin, an unforgiving emotional attitude frequently exploited by religious leaders who use it for coercion and control. Such sin and salvation merchants, obsessed with punishment, are likely either acting out their own guilt or projecting it onto others. Energy level 50, apathy. This level is characterized by poverty, despair, and hopelessness. The world and the future look bleak, and those in apathy are victims of life, needy in every way, and who lack not only resources, but the energy to avail themselves of what may be available. Unless external energy is supplied by caregivers, death through passive suicide can result. Without the will to live, the hopeless stare blankly, unresponsive to stimuli. People in apathy are heavy and are felt as a burden by those around them. Energy level 75, grief. This is the level of sadness, loss, and despondency. Most of us have experienced it for periods of time, but those who remain at this level live a life of constant regret and depression. This is the level of mourning, bereavement, and remorse about the past. It's also the level of habitual losers and those chronic gamblers who accept failure as a part of their lifestyle, often resulting in loss of jobs, friends, family, and opportunity, as well as money and health. Although grief is the cemetery of life, it still has more energy to it than apathy does. Thus, when a traumatized, apathetic patient begins to cry, we know they're getting better. Once they start to cry, they will eat again. Energy level 100, fear. At the level of 100, a lot more life energy is available. Fear of danger is healthy. Fear runs much of the world, spurring on endless activity. Fear of enemies, of old age, or death or rejection, and the multitude of social fears are basic motivators in most people's lives. From the viewpoint of this level, the world looks hazardous, full of traps and threats. Fear is the favored official tool for control by oppressive totalitarian agencies, and insecurity is the stock in trade of major manipulators of the marketplace. The media and advertising play to fear to increase market shares. Fear limits growth of the personality and leads to inhibition. Because it takes energy to rise above fear, the oppressed are unable to reach a higher level unaided. Thus, the fearful seek strong leaders who appear to have conquered their own fears to lead them out of its slavery. Energy level 125, desire. Even more energy is available at this level. Desire motivates vast areas of human activity, including the economy. Advertisers play on our desires to program us with needs linked to instinctual drives. Desire moves us to expend great effort to achieve goals or obtain rewards. The desire for money, prestige, or power runs the lives of many of those who have risen above fear as their predominant life motif. Desire is also the level of addiction, wherein it becomes a craving more important than life itself. The victim of desire may actually be unaware of the basis of his motives. Some people become addicted to the hunger for attention and drive others away by their constant demands. Desire is obviously a much higher state than apathy or grief, for in order to get, you have to first have the energy to want. TV has had a major influence on many oppressed people, creating wants and energizing their longings to the degree that they move out of apathy and begin to seek a better life. Want can start us on the road to achievement. Desire can, therefore, become a springboard to yet higher levels of awareness. Energy level 150, anger. Although anger may lead to homicide and war, as an energy level it's much further removed from death than those below it. Anger can lead to either constructive or destructive action. As people move out of apathy and grief to overcome fear as a way of life, they begin to want. Desire leads to frustration, which in turn leads to anger. Thus, anger can be a fulcrum by which the oppressed are eventually catapulted to freedom. Fury over social injustice, victimization, and inequality has created great movements that led to major changes in the structure of society. Since anger stems from frustrated want, it's based on the energy field below it. Frustration results from exaggerating the importance of desires. Anger also leads easily to hatred, which has an erosive effect on all areas of a person's life. Energy level 175, pride. Pride is the level aspired to by the majority of our kind today. In contrast to the lower energy fields, people feel positive as they reach this level. This rise in self-esteem is a balm to all the pain experienced at lower levels of consciousness. Pride looks good and knows it. It struts its stuff in the parade of life. Pride generally has a good reputation and is socially encouraged. Yet, as we see from the chart of the levels of consciousness, it's sufficiently negative to remain below the critical level of 200. This is why pride feels good only in contrast to the lower levels. The problem, as we all know, is that pride comes before a fall. Pride is defensive and vulnerable because it's dependent upon external conditions, without which it can suddenly revert to a lower level. The inflated ego is vulnerable to attack, and so pride remains weak because it can be knocked off its pedestal all the way back to shame. Energy level 200, courage. Here true power first appears. Courage is the first level of empowerment. This is the zone of exploration, accomplishment, fortitude, and determination. At the lower levels, the world is seen as hopeless, sad, frightening, or frustrating. But at the level of courage, life is seen to be exciting, challenging, and stimulating. Courage implies the willingness to try new things and deal with the changes and challenges of life. At this level of empowerment, one is able to cope with and effectively handle the opportunities of life, as well as face fears or character defects, and to grow despite them. People at this level put back into the world as much energy as they take. At lower levels, populations as well as individuals drain energy from society without reciprocating. But this level, courage, is where productivity begins. Dr. Hawkins said that the collective level of consciousness of mankind remained around 190 for many centuries, and curiously, only jumped to its current level of 207 in the 1990s. Energy level 250, neutrality. Energy becomes very positive because of the release from the positionality that typifies lower levels. Below 250, consciousness tends to see dichotomies and take on rigid positions, seeing things as black and white instead of complex and intricate. As in martial arts, a rigid position becomes a point of vulnerability. That which doesn't bend is liable to break. Rising above duality, the neutral state allows for flexibility and non-judgmental, realistic appraisal of problems. To be neutral means to be relatively unattached to outcomes. Not getting one's way is no longer experienced as defeating, frightening, or frustrating. At the neutral level, a person can say, well, if I don't get this job, then I'll get another. This is the beginning of inner confidence. People of neutrality have a sense of well-being. The mark of this level is a confident capability to live in the world. This is the level of safety. People at this level are easy to get along with and safe to be around. They also value freedom and thus are difficult to control. Energy level 310, willingness. This very positive level of energy may be seen as the gateway to the higher levels. For instance, at the neutral level, jobs are done adequately, but at the level of willingness, work is done well and success in all endeavors is common. Growth is rapid here. Willingness implies that one has overcome inner resistance to life and is committed to participation. The willing aren't troubled by unemployment. They'll take any job when they have to, or create a career or self-employment for themselves. They don't feel demeaned by service jobs or starting at the bottom. They're helpful to others and contribute to the good of society. With their capacity to bounce back from adversity and learn from experience, they tend to become self-correcting. Having let go of pride, they're willing to look at their defects and learn from others. And so people here become excellent students. They're easily trainable and represent a considerable source of power for society. Energy level 350, acceptance. At this level of awareness, a major transformation takes place with the understanding that one is both the source and creator of the experience of one's life. Taking such responsibility is distinctive of this degree of evolution, characterized by the capacity to live harmoniously with the forces of life. People below 200 tend to be powerless and see themselves as victims, at the mercy of life. This stems from a belief that the source of one's happiness or the cause of one's problems is out there. An enormous jump, taking back one's own power, is completed at this level, with the realization that the source of happiness is within oneself. At this more evolved stage, nothing out there has the capacity to make one happy, and love isn't something that's given or taken away by another, but is created from within. Long-term goals take precedence over short-term ones, and self-discipline and mastery are prominent. Energy level 400, reason. Intelligence and rationality rise to the forefront when the emotionalism of the lower levels is transcended. Reason is capable of handling large, complex amounts of data and making rapid, correct decisions, and of understanding the intricacies of relationships, gradations, and fine distinctions. Expert manipulation of symbols as abstract concepts become increasingly important. The shortcomings of this level involve the failure to clearly distinguish the difference between symbols and what they represent. Here it is easy to lose sight of the forest for the trees and to become infatuated with concepts and theories and end up missing the essential point. Intellectualizing can become an end in itself. It must be known, reason does not of itself provide a guide to truth. It produces massive amounts of information and documentation, but lacks the capability to resolve discrepancies in data and conclusions. Although reason is highly effective in a technical world, where the methodologies of logic dominate, reason itself, paradoxically, is the major block to reaching higher levels of consciousness. Transcending this level is relatively uncommon in our society today. Energy level 500, love. What the world generally refers to as love is usually an intense emotional condition, combining physical attraction, possessiveness, control, addiction, eroticism, and novelty. True love, however, represented by this energy level, is unconditional, unchanging, and permanent. It doesn't fluctuate. Its source isn't dependent on external factors. Loving is a state of being. It's a forgiving, nurturing, and supportive way of relating to the world. Love isn't intellectual and doesn't proceed from the mind. Love emanates from the heart. It has the capacity to lift others and accomplish great feats because of its purity of motive. At this level of development, the capacity to discern essence becomes predominant. The core of an issue becomes the center of focus. As reason is bypassed, there arises the capacity for instantaneous recognition of the totality of a problem and a major expansion of context. Where reason deals only with particulars, whereas love deals with entireties. This ability, often ascribed to intuition, is the capacity for instantaneous understanding without resorting to sequential symbol processing. This apparently abstract phenomenon is, in fact, quite concrete. It's accompanied by the measurable release of endorphins in the brain. Love takes no position and thus is global, rising above all separation. Love focuses on the goodness of life in all its expressions and augments that which is positive. It dissolves negativity by recontextualizing it rather than by attacking it. This is the level of true happiness. But although the world is fascinated with the subject of love, and all viable religions calibrate at 500 or over, it's interesting to note that only 0.4% of the world's population ever seems to reach this level of evolution of consciousness. Energy level 540, joy. As love becomes more and more unconditional, it begins to be experienced as inner joy. This isn't the sudden joy of a pleasurable turn of events. It's a constant accompaniment to all activities. Joy arises from within each moment of existence rather than from any other source. 540 is also the level of healing and of spiritually based self-help groups. From the level 540 and up is the domain of saints and advanced spiritual students and healers. A capacity for enormous patience and the persistence of a positive attitude in the face of prolonged adversity is characteristic of this energy field. The hallmark of this state is compassion. People who have attained this level have a notable effect on others. They're capable of a prolonged, open visual gaze, which induces a state of love and peace. At the high 500s, the world one sees is illuminated by exquisite beauty and the perfection of creation. Everything happens effortlessly by synchronicity, and the world and everything in it is seen to be an expression of love and divinity. Individual will merges into divine will. A presence is felt whose power facilitates phenomena outside conventional expectations of reality, termed miraculous by the ordinary observer. These phenomena represent the power of the energy field, not of the individual. One's sense of responsibility for others at this level is of a different quality from that shown at the lower levels. There is a desire to use one's state of consciousness for the benefit of life rather than for particular individuals. This capacity to love many simultaneously is accompanied by the discovery that the more one loves, the more one can love. Near-death experiences, characteristically transformative in their effect, have frequently allowed people to experience the energy level between 540 and 600. Energy level 600, peace. This energy field is associated with the experience designated by such terms as transcendence, self-realization, and God consciousness. It's extremely rare, only attained by 1 in 10 million people. When this state is reached, the distinction between subject and object disappears, and there's no specific focal point in perception. Not uncommonly, individuals at this level often remove themselves from the world, as the state of bliss that ensues precludes ordinary activity. Some become spiritual teachers, others work anonymously for the betterment of mankind, a few become great geniuses in their respective fields and make major contributions to society. These people are saintly and may eventually be officially designated as such, although at this level, formal religion is commonly transcended to be replaced by the pure spirituality out of which all religion originates. Here there is an infinite silence in the mind which has stopped conceptualizing. That which is witnessing and that which is witnessed take on the same identity. The observer dissolves into the landscape and becomes equally the observed. Energy levels 700 to 1000, Enlightenment. This is the level of the great ones of history who originated the spiritual patterns that countless people have followed throughout the ages. All are associated with divinity, with which they're often identified. This is the level of powerful inspiration. These beings set in place attractor energy fields that influence all of mankind. At this level, there is no longer the experience of an individual personal self separate from others. Rather, there is an identification of self with consciousness and divinity. The unmanifest is experienced as self beyond mind. This transcendence of the ego also serves by example to teach others how it can be accomplished by all. This is the peak of the evolution of consciousness in the human realm. Great teachers uplift the masses and raise the level of awareness of all of humanity. To have such vision is called grace, and the gift it brings is infinite peace, described as indefinable beyond words. At this level of realization, the sense of one's existence transcends all time and individuality. There's no longer any identification with the physical body as me, and therefore its fate is of no concern. The body is seen as merely a tool of consciousness through the intervention of mind, its prime value, that of communication. The lower self merges back into the supreme self, the spirit. This is the level of non-duality or complete oneness. There is no localization of consciousness. Awareness is equally present everywhere. Great works of art depicting individuals who have reached the level of enlightenment characteristically show the teacher with a specific hand position called mudra, wherein the palm of the hand radiates benediction. This is the act of transmitting this energy field to the consciousness of mankind. This level of divine grace calibrates up to 1000, the highest level attained by anybody who has lived in recorded history. Namely, the great avatars for whom the title Lord is appropriate: Lord Krishna, Lord Buddha, and Lord Jesus Christ. Now, alongside these levels, we could imagine a graphic representation of the distribution of these respective energies among the world's population to resemble the shape of a pagoda roof, in that 85% of the human race calibrates below the critical level of 200, while the overall average level of human consciousness today is approximately 207.1, or at least it was when this material first was published. The power of the relatively few individuals near the top counterbalances the weakness of the masses towards the bottom to achieve this overall average. As mentioned, only 4% of the world's population calibrates at an energy field of 500 or above. Only 0.4% reach 540, and a level of consciousness calibrating at 600 or above is reached by only 1 in 10 million. At first glance, these figures may seem improbable, but if we examine world conditions, we'll quickly be reminded that the populations of entire subcontinents live at a barely existing level. Famine and disease are commonplace, frequently accompanied by a state of political oppression and scant social resources. Many of these people live in a state of hopelessness, calibrating at a level of apathy in resignation to their abject poverty. We must also realize that much of the remainder of the world's population, civilized as well as primitive, lives primarily in fear. The majority of humans spend their lives in a quest for one form of security or another. Those whose lifestyles transcend the imperative of survival often move permanently into a desire-driven reality, and success in attaining these desires usually only leads to pride. However, any truly meaningful human satisfaction cannot even commence until the level of 250, where some degree of self-confidence begins to emerge as a basis for positive life experiences in the evolution of consciousness. It's our goal here at Spiritverse to be in support of the raising of collective consciousness by any and all means available. Through our own spiritual discipline, the creation of content like this, as well as facilitating events, courses, creating products, writing books, and whatever else is creatively alive within us, to be in service to you and the great awakening that humanity is experiencing today. Now, for me, one of the most dear projects to my heart that I've worked on for many years now is Patch to Row, a pictographic diagram of the body of consciousness and the pathway to ascension. Through beautiful and sacred symbology and deep connections between many spiritual teachings, Patch to Row is a resource that you can use to reflect on different experiences in life, gain insight and direction, and support you in navigating the ups and downs of your journey. And at long last, Patch to Row 3 is now available for pre-order. Those who order today can also get a special bundle with the new Book of Patch, and both of which will be shipping together very soon. These cards are all hand-painted by yours truly, and in addition to over 100 edits and updates since the last edition, will also come in a magnetically sealed case and printed with layered holographic foil, making it without a doubt one of the most beautiful and resonant decks you've ever used. Use the link in the description to order yours today, and thank you so much for watching this video. I hope to see you in the next one.